Hello everybody. We're going to be going live soon, talking about all sorts of stuff. Yo, we're going to be going live soon.
There you go, guys. That is just a little to whet your appetite. That is my guest, and that is his. Actually, it's my guest docu-series, and it's called Cult World, and we are listening to episode 7, which is The Cult of Celebrities in Hollywood. I just wanted to play that little clip to start off this show, but just to whet your guys' appetite, give you a taste of what you're going to find. He covers a lot of different topics in this Cult World series. I cannot recommend it enough. I did put a link in the chat room, guys. Please go to his YouTube channel and show some support and definitely dive into this. It's going to be worth your time. A lot of interesting stuff here, a lot of disturbing stuff too, as I was saying. And I found myself, as I was watching some of these episodes, at times it's funny, but what is funny, at least for me, at the start, becomes, sad or just messed up. And so this is definitely, if you want to dive deeper into the whole issue of cults, I know I've touched on that several times on this show. Definitely please go and show some support. I want to welcome him to the show, the man who is responsible for this series and a lot of other incredible work that he's putting out there. I really don't know somebody who's quite putting out as much work as Corey is, and that is my guest, Corey Angelot. Corey, welcome back to the show. I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm very glad to be here, and we're live with my audience as well, so I'm very proud to connect these audiences together and be on the show again. It's been a hot minute.
It sure has, and you're so busy. I was just saying that just a second ago, and I was saying it at the start of the show, that you put out a lot of amazing content, and I want to make sure I give you a chance at the end of the show to give you the floor to let people know where they can find all your work. But I did provide the link to your YouTube channel because I hope people are going to take the time to dive into this. And I know we only got a few minutes before the break. We got about probably 9 minutes or so I don't want to get too deep into it. But This is a really powerful project that you've undertaken. I'm a big fan of this Cult World, and you've really got into some important topics, like really good stuff here, man. And I wanted to play this one because I talk a lot about celebrities, Hollywood, and the cult of it, and it's just this weird thing that we've all been guilty of, I'm sure, at one time. I know I have when I was younger, putting these celebrities or rock stars on these pedestals. What are your thoughts? Like, it's really an interesting topic.
Yeah, well, lucky for me, I was raised with parents who always told me never put anybody on a pedestal. So I never really put anyone on a pedestal, but despite that, we do grow up and we do look up to certain people, and we might think, oh, I'm not really putting them on a pedestal, or I'm not really, that invested. But then something happens to someone, and then we have this emotional reaction, and we're like, oh, wait, I've been consuming their movies, their content for such a long time. There is an emotional investment. And it's not that that is a bad thing within itself, because people develop relationships with others, especially others that appeal to them and that speak to them. But that there's these deeper underlying psychological issues that we may not understand, such as the fact that we might be projecting what we want to see in ourselves by looking at these celebrities as like a better version of ourselves. And if we're not using them as a source of inspiration, we have to be careful. Because it can become very parasocial is the term that is used nowadays, which is to say that you become like overly obsessive, or you're watching their every move, or you live your life through them. And, people are watching vlogs, and it's like very interesting, right? It's something to observe. It's something to be conscious of. And the whole series I created was to help individuals become more conscious of themselves. It's not to say this is inherently right or wrong, this is inherently a cult or not, but simply by having the conversation, is this a cult, or am I engaging in something that is a little too obsessive or fanatical or cultish, I can become more understanding of who I am and my role with other people, or these, celebrities that are online that I have no relationship to whatsoever, or who I, don't interact with on a day-to-day basis, or have absolutely no influence upon my own personal life. And so, maybe the celebrity is really your own family, or your animals. I mean, give them some attention, right? or the earth around you. But it's arguable because celebrities could also do good in the world and they could possibly interact with you. You know, who's to say they can't? So there's a lot of nuance with it, but celebrities also suffer themselves. And in the course of the documentary, I show that because a lot of people want to be famous. They say, I want to be the celebrity. And you find out maybe that's not such a good idea either. You know, it's not that you want to be the celebrity and be on that high position, but you also don't want to be the person who doesn't have any influence at all, right? Or maybe that's okay, and you just want to be in a position of humility, and you're okay with just being yourself and happy and content, and you're not looking at influence. Is that possible in our world where there's numbers and clicks and subscriber counts, right? Like for me, I've been doing this work for a long time, and as you know, Crypt, I don't really care too much about all the subscriber base and viewership. I want to make an impact in the world, but I believe the message should become the celebrity, not me. But the message has to be delivered through somebody, and when people develop a relationship to somebody online, in a sense, even though I wouldn't call it a genuine relationship, it does build a level of like, okay, reputation, you know, trust, like this is where I get my information from. This is who I can go to often to learn this knowledge. But I want people to question me, and ultimately I believe that the knowledge comes from nature. I talk about nature as the answer, universal timeless truths, which means that I can point, I can guide, but you can find the same understanding in your own life. It doesn't rely on me. You don't have to depend on me. You don't have to throw a red carpet. You know, you don't have to throw an awards ceremony. The award is the action, the effort, the effect that we get in the world as the result. That's to me the ultimate reward. You know, it's not some numbers or some fancy looking award.
No, I agree. The message is definitely. I've always thought that too. That it's really the message that you're putting out there, and I don't think. Yeah, subscribers and stuff. I mean, yeah, I get it. I mean, it's the world that we live in on social media and stuff, and I can see why people get obsessed with it. I'm obviously, if people know me, I'm not obsessed with the numbers or anything. I think it's just important to have these conversations and to get the message out there. And so I'm kind of glad that you kind of touched on that, because I do think that people. Like these platforms, this is what they cater to, right? Is these numbers. It's the incentive, is how many subscribers can you get, how many likes can you get, how many shares, all this kind of stuff. So I get why people are fixated on that, but I think it's important what you just said, Corey, that the message should be what matters, and not even necessarily the messenger too. I mean, I think that's another one too. Like, it's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, people are going to be respected in their fields, and people are always going to look up to others for a source of wisdom, in a sense, right? And that's not a bad thing, you know, but it's becoming conscious of your relationship in that, because you can have your own voice and you can be that individual sooner in your own life. And it could be an influence not over like millions of people like we have on social media, or, you know, a politician in office where everybody's worshiping and doing everything they say. Like, that's a whole different level of celebrity worship, as opposed to, say, you know, somebody in your community that you aspire to, that you think is a really good leader. Like, there's plenty of people I think are really like inspirational for me that brought me to where I am. Think of Jim Gale, right, from Galt's Landing, and how he inspired me to get into food forestry and permaculture. Think of Ryan Golombeski, a Bigfoot researcher who I'm partnered with. So inspirational. He's got 4 kids running around. He's like the best dad ever for them, and raising them in nature. It's just like seeing how busy he is and yet how much time and care he gives into it is so inspirational. Looking at Mark Passio, the ability, his speech, you know, his ability to just change the room, move the room. You feel the energy when he's talking. And these are people that inspire me. Mike Adams, I mean, he has done more work than anybody else in independent media for the past 30 years. The most deplatformed person on the internet. Developed his own ad systems, his own search engines, his own AIs, put millions of dollars into it, ships out millions of dollars of products a year, works with world-leading doctors and scientists. Like, this is insane. The fact I know these people, Crypt Rick, it's like, how grateful could I be? These are the people. If I wanted to get in touch with any quote-unquote celebrity, who else would it be? These are genuine people I can talk to, I can meet, I can go to. Anybody can. Who are doing such great work in the world, who are trying to do their best, who are creating not solutions that make you dependent on them and consume their content, but solutions that you can actually partake in yourself. Like these AI systems that Mike Adams is developing is absolutely incredible. Just released another tool last week, and I'm gonna have to make videos about it. And there's nobody on YouTube making videos about it because this stuff is all decentralized. It's absolutely insane. And here you have someone who's got a multi-million-dollar laboratory, world-leading spectrometry on heavy metal testing, best-selling book, food forensics, used to have over millions of subscribers on every platform. And now, I'm in touch with him. This one guy, me, who's got like, 4,000 on YouTube? Nothing compared to these guys, what they had 20, 30 years ago, and the amount of influence they have had, and now still shipping out millions of dollars of products only on their own websites, having their own video platforms, not even on YouTube and TikTok and all that stuff. Crazy. Absolutely amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. And what a great way to end it. We rolled right up on the great break, Corey. That is perfect. I just ask everybody, please stick around. My guest, Corey Andrelot, he is the creator of the docuseries Cult World. I definitely recommend that you guys check it out. We're going to be back, hour 2. Stick around, guys. Corey Andrelot, we're going to dive into this series a lot more, break things down. Stick around, guys.
I don't know if I have to mute myself on his end. What's up, guys in the chat? What's up? He can't tell if I talk to you guys because this is on radio. So, unity and balance, for example. I agree. Yeah, okay. He said to mute. I did a good step. I muted. So I guess if there's commercial breaks, I can talk to you guys every break. That's interesting. I host roundtables for folks like us. I'm holding one in 5 minutes or so. Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to get involved. If you ever want to talk or share ideas, I always like to collaborate with different folks. So who's interviewing me is Crypt Rick from Revolution Radio. And I haven't talked to him in quite a hot minute. I've done some collaborations with him before in the past. One particular was 5 reasons why we're still enslaved as a human species, based on my slavery work and the abolition work that I do. And so this one, I'm assuming, will be more about cults and that whole relationship. I have not done a single interview on the subject, so you guys can kind of get a summary of my thoughts and reflections on the whole series, but we'll see what questions he has to ask. If you guys have any questions in the chat that you guys are curious about, let me know, because that was quite a bit of a series, and there was a lot of different topics, and there's a lot of things I did not go into regarding the problems with certain groups or certain identities. More so, I want to cultivate, as I said before, a self-reflection in you to ask for yourself, what am I attached to? What identities do I have? What am I associated with, ultimately? And remember the number one thing, people don't think they're in a cult. They don't think they're in a cult. A lot of people are just doing their thing, right? Living their life, but they're joining jobs, they're joining religions, they're joining groups, and there could be a level of coercion or mind control involved in varying degrees. And the stronger that degree is, the more we might say it's cultish or fanatical. So this is something I might mention as well in this interview. But something to be aware of, there's many different people in the research fields of cults, as I have shown in the docuseries, that don't really have a definitive definition of what is a cult. But like I said, that's why the word cultish exists, or fanaticism, sort of like a spectrum of what is more culty, what is less culty, depending on coercion and the level of manipulation. But I want to also uplift the vibes. I think it's important to go over the solutions and some of the amazing things that have been happening. And one of those things, by the way, before we get into the show, is just how thankful I am for all you guys. There's a lot of new folks on the channel, a lot of new people here. And if you're watching this live stream, I just want to say huge thanks. I don't have the opportunity to always say thanks in my videos because I'm trying to make it concise and perfect for the audience and the new folk. But these live streams give me a chance to connect with my audience and to have these more open conversations. So thank you for everybody out there who is staying tuned. And just so you know, I'm live on kick.com, twitch.tv, and youtube.com. So you can join me on any one of those platforms. Kick.com is particularly interesting because a lot of people who are sort of off the beaten path are there. I'm also live on Brighteon.com, which is definitely alternative. If you don't know what Brighteon is, I would recommend looking into it. It's an alternative video platform, and I'm not sponsored to say that, by the way. I'm saying that because it's generally a very interesting platform. There's a lot of alternative voices on there. And think of it what you will. Always think for yourself. You don't have to agree with everything I say. You certainly shouldn't. If you know anything about the works that I put out, you guys are free thinkers. That's what I like about you. You're not just order followers and sheeple, per se. What are you saying, Bernard? Welcome to the chat. I don't know what you're typing here. Are we speaking in riddles now? What's going on? And we got Tom Rua. We got Annabelle. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's see, Cryptrick sent me a message. Chat room here is buzzing. Oh snap! There's a chat room in the radio chat. Are they talking about me? Where are they talking about me? Oh, okay. I see the chat room now. Interesting. Okay, so they're on Discord. I think this is a public Discord. I can invite you guys if you are on Discord. You guys use Discord out there? Brighteon is marvelous. Cool, you know about it? Awesome. Did you find me from that? You know, I'm always curious. Where did you guys find me? Where did you guys find me? Was it the Cult World documentary series or...
Welcome back, everybody. As promised, we are back here for hour 2, and it was not that long of a break, so please... stay tuned because this second hour is going to be definitely an interesting conversation. I have my friend, my guest, Corey Anderlot. He has the YouTube channel, Corey, Nature is the Answer, and we are talking about his docu-series, Cult World. It's on, he's already got 10 episodes out, and I'm just going to give you a title, the name of a couple of these episodes, just to, get your guys' curiosity going. Now, we were listening to The Cult of Celebrities in Hollywood, and a couple other ones is The Cult of Politics, Military, and Police. That's a great one, by the way. We have The Cult of Sports, super interesting. The Cult of Religion, Satanism, and Freemasonry. And one other one I will say is The Cult of Medicine. So there you go. That is just a few of the topics that Corey is covering in this docu-series that I highly recommend. Please, guys, check it out. Link is in the chat room. So there you go. And Corey, welcome back to the show. I'm so glad we got this whole hour to dive into this because, as I keep saying, I think this is really an important project you've taken on. And I just wanted to start by asking you, what made you want to do this docu-series?
Thank you, and good question, and I'm very glad to be here. And for everybody in the chat, if you have any questions, I'm staying tuned on the live stream as well, and in the Discord chat room. So this topic of cults is something that I think didn't really get a whole lot of attention in the way that I wanted to see it get attention, which is that what if the mainstream systems that we live in or everyday systems that we deal with have cultish elements within it, right? Because you often see in a lot of comment sections of notorious and very famous cult experts around the country and around the world, people are saying, well, this sounds a lot like politics. Oh, this sounds a lot like sports. Oh, this sounds a lot like my college fraternity. This sounds a lot like, all sorts of things that people engage with on a day-to-day basis, or like my own relationship. It sounds like an abusive relationship. And so people say these things when they hear about, let's say, certain particular cults in history that are like usually small groups of documentaries that you find on Netflix, the David Koresh cult, certain like small incidents where you have cults that are studied in documentaries. You often hear about them, but you don't necessarily hear about these bigger, more worldly cults that people are engaged with. So I wanted to give that special attention, and I wanted to see, is there anybody out there who are criticizing those systems? So I went through every single topic in our society to see, well, is it a cult? Is, what people are talking about? And you can make up your own mind. I wanted to show it. I wanted to not just speak it, but just ask questions and show it. And there's plenty of people. I wanted to give mainstream individuals and alternative individuals both the attention on the subject. And I gave multiple different perspectives on each subject because, of course, you can go deep into the school system or deep into religion or politics in 100 different directions. But the key theme is looking at the identities, the attachments, and some of the very underlying basic phenomena that takes place with these fields of study. And so, when people are just like at a rally with Trump or Hillary or any of these people, and they're crying, they're begging, they have all this emotional investment and energy built up, like you have to wonder what's going on in their mind. When someone's at a sports game and they're fully dressed up, they got the tattoos, the makeup, and their whole life is invested into it, and some player that they like does a wrong play, and they get all emotionally upset, and they start yelling at the person across from them, and then they get into a huge fight, and they run into the field, and they start fighting other players. What's going on in their own mind that's causing this to happen? These are the things that would make me curious, even just growing up in this world, being exposed to it myself, seeing people who are into sports, and that would be a common question. It's like, oh, do you follow football? Do you follow baseball? And I'd be sitting there like, yeah, I don't really follow any of that. And I just, and then there's been times where I have. I actually did baseball like 8 years of my life, and my dad was a coach, and I grew up following football and all this stuff, so I like sports, partaking in them. But over time, realizing just the fanaticism, the obsession people had with it, I just never understood that. And perhaps that's because of the work that I do. It's always about like critical thinking and trying to change the world and trying to look at more important things going on, because sports is maybe not the most important thing. But it can be a time of leisure, a time of hanging out with friends, and maybe once in a while I'll still go to a Super Bowl party. But I don't have a whole lot of emotional investment. These are people who are gaining millions of dollars from, kicking a ball around. And it's very interesting. But the reason why I made the documentary was not even to display these more mainstream cults. It was actually because I've been exposed to a lot of people in the alternative media and in the freedom movements, or people who are truth seekers, who are very much obsessive with their own ideas of truth and freedom, or even certain theories, 9/11 or certain events in history. And while I respect their quest for asking questions and wanting to find the truth, there is a level to which they have to be conscious of themselves and careful that they're not scaring people away or isolating themselves in their knowledge and thinking that what they have is the truth above all other truths. And I see this in Mark Passio's natural law community as well, when we're saying this is the only solution, objective morality must be defined this way. If you don't follow this, you're immoral. And what can happen with this fanaticism over time is you're going to have people who say, or do really bad things and say, oh, well, it's justified because objective morality said so, or natural law said so, or because this one clip of Mark Passio said so, or because this presentation said so, and then they copy all the exact words and the terminology and the presentation, and they start, buying all the merch. And you just have to be very careful, because people can make all sorts of justifications for things based on any worldview. People can turn any idea into a cult-like mentality or fanaticism if they're not careful, if they don't know who they are, if they are still projecting, if they still have inner work to do. And so that's actually the main reason why I made it. It wasn't because, of all the mainstream systems. It was because I have this growing concern that there's people who call themselves truth seekers who have to become more self-conscious just as much as the people that they're attacking. And so it's a process that we both have to learn from. Like, we're all always improving. The person who says they're a truther, they had this experience after being asleep. So they attack now the people who are asleep, but they were once one of those people. They have to have compassion. They have to have some humility. They have to approach it with some questioning and realize, like, we all got here because of deception. And we're talking about these truth concepts because of a deception. And a lot of people wouldn't even follow my work if it wasn't for the deception, right? So in a way, the problems are feeding the solutions. The problems are feeding me a viewership I wouldn't have. And it's becoming conscious of that fact, because that means, like, you can grow really attached to it. There's content creators on independent media who feed fear all day long to their followers and then tell them, go buy my merch, go buy my supplements. And let's talk about the latest news, but let's not actually build anything positive and uplifting for humanity. Let's not try to build relationships with people who disagree with us. Let's just continue the echo chamber and speak to this one crowd that wants the anti-Israel narrative, or the anti-China narrative, or the flat earth narrative, or the whatever narrative it is. And again, I am all for questioning everything in our world. You know me, correct, Eric? I talk about slavery. I talk about some of the deepest, hardest subjects on earth. I talk about everything throughout the years of my channel. I'm not afraid. But that's the thing. I'm not stuck to one thing. I am not attached, and I'm not, like, unwilling to say I was wrong. But how easy will it be for a content creator who's invested their whole life into a certain message to admit that they were wrong? You see what I mean?
That's a tough one. Yeah. Oh, that's probably, yeah. I totally understand what you're saying, and it's something that I think anyone who's being honest is definitely seen in all of these communities. And I'm glad that we're kind of touching on this. I've touched on it before about echo chambers, and really kind of dove into that. It's what I fear, to be honest, is this echo chamber where discussion is not allowed to grow. And I'm very much like you. I make no secret about it that I'm very open to discussion. I mean, it's why I do this show.
Yeah.
And why I love interviewing people. I love to hear different people's points of view, but there's a problem. Sometimes people don't like different points of view, and then you kind of the discussion can't even happen. And I'm just like,
exactly.
You always got to be open, right, to the discussion and hearing different sides and different points of view. To me, that's how growth happens. It does not, and I said this at the beginning of the show, Corey. I said it doesn't mean every guest I get on, I agree 100% with what they're saying.
Yep.
But I'm very open to the discussion. And I think that when you box yourself and you really are rigid, and you said, like, flat earth or whatever it is, pick your whatever it is, fill in the blank, but people that become very rigid in a belief or an idea, I think that when you become that rigid, you lose the ability to kind of flow with the information and let the information take you where it has to. And I say that about my conversations. That's why I don't plan questions and stuff like that. I want it organic. I want this conversation to be as organic and no guidelines, and let it go where it wants. And that's exactly what it's doing. And I think that's where this is very a powerful way to attach to discuss things. And so I get what you're saying about people getting stuck, and then they become very defensive as soon as you kind of challenge any of their beliefs. I think it's just a dangerous way to be.
Yeah. I think we have to move from a position of, I'm right, you're wrong, or I have the knowledge that you don't have, to one of, how could I build a relationship with you? What is it that you currently believe? Why do you believe it? Who are you? What do you care about? What do you love to do? And it's like, but it's like, oh, well, that's not going to bring us to the problems of the world. That's not going to help people. It's like, well, it'll help people trust you, so that way you can talk about the problems. It will go there on its own. If you're passionate about something, if you know something and you want other people to know, build a relationship, and then they'll ask you. You don't have to tell them. And so it's actually quite profound, but it's not even that we have to share the information. The information is not even that relevant as much as we think. We say, well, this is the one thing we have to know. This is what we have to teach. And, I talk about these different subjects, which I say, if you learn slavery, you would learn cults. If you learn cults, you'd probably learn about slavery in the same sense. Or you learn gang behavior, mafia behavior, any coercion, mind control techniques. These are all kind of interwoven. You don't have to learn a particular field. But what you can come to understand is that it's not even about the certain information, but how you perceive the information, how you process the information, how you give the information, and that's going to determine all the rest. If you have someone who has an open mind, who has a beautiful soul, or really has just a heart that wants to take in the world from an open-minded perspective, then it doesn't really matter what information you have to share, because they'll be able to be discerning for themselves. They'll be able to look at things critically. They'll be able to find out the truth for themselves. And so there's no crazy need of convincing or having to teach. It would happen quite naturally. And by the way, I can say this, but I think it's also good to see it in action. I was at the college campuses yesterday, and I'm going to be doing it more and more. But I was talking with different students, and I loved the conversations I had. And I would tell them, I'm like, do you have a message to share with the world? Any concerns, any solutions, right? And then I would share with them a flyer after opening up to them and building that relationship. And this flyer, I could actually tell you what it has on it, but this one's a bit louder. It's very direct, and it says, escape the matrix, right? And it says, do not just use ChatGPT. Every lawn could be a food force. School is designed for obedience. Politics is designed for division. Health requires nature, not pills. And then it says, why this flyer? Who are we? Collab, right? So I give out this flyer, but the way I approach them is I say to them, like, hey, these are untold ideas, stuff that we aren't taught in school. I care a lot about our world. I just want you to learn about it. You don't have to agree, right? And so the way I approach them is very kind, even though the message is very direct. And it might be something that might offend some people if, I were to come up to them and be like, you got to escape the matrix, you're enslaved, you don't understand, and they're keeping you suppressed. It's just not going to work. On the average person, they're going to think you're crazy, and even the small things you do, right? I mean, I got long hair. People who are really plugged into the people who are really plugged into the matrix per se, or to the systems that be, they're going to judge you for your appearance. They're not going to look at the information. Sure. So it's even the small things like that. Like I wore a button-up shirt that's like a solid color to keep things very focused, like a dark blue. And then I put my hair up to kind of keep things clean. And I know it's like, no, I'm not going to change myself. I'm always going to be myself, but I'm trying to find ways to be like, how can I open this conversation in the lightest way possible? Because nowadays it's hard. Everybody does have their triggers, and people are attached. And you're not going to win everybody. There's still going to be people who I can approach very kindly, and they're going to be an NPC plugged into their phone or distracted. I got somewhere to go. I don't want to take a flyer. I don't even want to look at it. I don't even want to consider what you have to say. There's always going to be those people, but I think it's worth learning these types of strategies. It's like, these are people we care for, and if we care for them, then wouldn't we want to do everything possible to try to heal them and help them? And then once they become freer, then they're gonna be like, yeah, you should be yourself. Yeah, you shouldn't be someone else. Yeah, you should open up to me and tell me all that you're thinking and feeling, because I care about you just as much as you care about me. If you don't show any care and you just show like you have an agenda and you want to plug your way or the highway, then it's just not going to work. And I think people on the internet too respect authenticity, and so it's something that people should consider in the truth movement moving forward, because it's very easy to get stigmatized by the mainstream. These are the crazy conspiracy theorists who think this and think that. But if you're a nuanced person who doesn't put yourself in a box, it makes it much harder for the system to attack you. And then everyday people will look at that and be like, maybe he's got a point. And maybe he isn't as crazy as they say, right? You're not feeding into the fire that they're trying to create for you. But just some ideas.
Definitely. I like it. I like trying different things and to reach different people. And you make a great point. You're not going to reach everybody. And I find that, really for me, and I can only go by I always say what I experience and what I'm kind of experiencing going through. And, it's definitely, it seems like people seek out this information and are very open to it. Like I tried that at the start. I tried really going at people and especially like friends and family, and that I would bring this information and just kind of like drop a nuke on them and just like overwhelm them. And I learned very quickly,
I did too.
I think you probably, you learn like, this is not the approach. This is you know, not going to work. It
I think
just,
we're all going to
nobody
do
there
it.
is receptive. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I think we're all going to do it. I think we all do it. There was a time, where my parents were very resistant to my message. And by the way, my parents are very open, and obviously they changed a lot of their worldview and their diet because of me over time, just being around them. And we've talked about that before, and I've shared it on my channel quite a bit. My story of reading ingredients in the grocery store and getting into nutrition. But there was a time in 2016 where my parents were like, Hillary Clinton should be president. I think we need a woman. Abortion is okay. All this stuff, right? And I would ask them questions, and I would challenge them, and they didn't like that. And even I wasn't like that extreme with it, but they got defensive, they got reactive. But over time, because of my compassion and learning how to speak things better and being there with them, things shifted so much so that now if something comes up, my parents are the ones who go and tell other people, oh, you got to look into this, look into that. And I'm sitting there past that stage now, and I'm like, that's great. I love the fact that you're sharing what I shared with you, but you also have to learn to like relax a little bit, right? Like it's actually like I'm applauding in the back of my mind. I'm like, this is amazing. Good job, mom. And then I'm like, just like relax a little bit, take a chill pill. And I think my parents are there too now, but it's a transition to where it's like you realize everything that's going on in the world and you just want to tell everybody, and you're like, you got to understand this, you got to understand that. And then a couple years later, you realize, okay, I gotta be more chill with my approach, got to be a bit more strategic. And I think as time grows older, you become wiser with this type of knowledge. At least if you are trying to improve, and you're not just consuming, or even producing. In the case of a content creator, like I said, who is just trying to market to a certain crowd, I think there's a lot of respectability to a content creator who's flexible, who's willing to change their mind. There's actually a case example of that in the flat earth community. Somebody who changed their mind after years, and regardless of what you think of the issue, again, regardless, here's someone who is thinking for himself in the truth movement, and after he did that, everybody started to attack him. All the so-called truthers, flat earthers. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? What's his name?
I interviewed him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so...
Yep. Afterwards, and what he's gone through. It was very interesting.
Okay.
Interview.
Wow. Yeah, that would be very interesting to check out. But that's a good example, right, of how there's cultish mentalities in the truth movement, which you think would be the very last movement to have cult mentalities. So it's that type of awareness we need to have, so we don't fall into the very thing that we are attacking. And that happens a lot with the rebel who is mad at the world, or the kid who's like, I want to rule the world and I'm going to get revenge one day because of what they did to me, and we can't have that mindset. We have to be more mature and treat things like, okay, we can't be in this never-ending loop where because someone hurt us, we hurt them. It's like that self-loathing slide that Mark Passio has of the guy in the cage who's like, I'm going to put the other people in the cage. I'm in the cage. I'm going to make you suffer with me. It's like, it's not a great model for the world, is it? But a lot of our world is based off of trauma and fear, and people just turning off their conscience, turning off their brain because that's the system they live in, and because they're told to do so, because they were raised in it, and they can't think of any other way out. We need to inspire and show different ways out. Say, hey, this is the other way that you can do things. When I went to the colleges, actually, some people were just like, man, this is so necessary. I hear this all the time in person talking to people. They're like, this is so necessary. Nobody ever shared this with me. And I think it's important that we build those relationships and create these projects that do that.
I agree, and I love the fact that your boots on the ground, and you're kind of. I really enjoyed those videos when you kind of show that you're going around to the colleges and places, and really, like I say, there's nothing better than in person, face to face, and kind of having a discussion that way. And it's not for this show, but I've made a great argument that we're losing that ability to some degree, and
Yes.
we're suffering as humanity for it. But I do have a question before I forget. It is from somebody in the chat. I'm not sure if you can see it, but I can read it. I don't have my glasses on, but I'm going to stumble my way through this probably. It's from Omega Logos, and he says, at Corey, Is there any hope for humanity who is wrapped up and warped by anything that deeply influences them slash us? Hungers and desires drive us, sometimes needlessly, towards destruction. Can we as mankind ever turn that around, or are we doomed to generationally repeat the dangers of drugs, sex, rock and roll, routine, and rituals that have plagued us since the dawn of time?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great question. And man, how deep is that toward the end there? Since the dawn of time. Well, I think it's interesting. The dawn of time. We tend to dramatize our current world and say that the systems that we live under have existed for such a long time. But I'll be honest with you. I give the example of slavery and how that ended 200 years or so ago in America after thousands of years. There's a lot of practices that are no longer continued to this day. There's a lot of evolution and progress that we've made as humanity, and we don't see it because of how natural we've come into that transition through our moral enlightenment and through the education. And it's something I think truthers need to understand more, is like they don't realize their role, they don't realize their power or their value. They think the world is asleep and nobody's listening and there's no hope of trying to free the world. But that's just not true. I mean, 1%, 3% of the population creates all the revolutions in history. And one or few people are the people in power over millions, which means that one or few people can have that much influence over millions, and you see that with content creators itself. And so I think it's interesting to just first of all mention this idea of the dawn of time, because there's actually also a book called The Dawn of a New Age or something like that by J.W.M. Lloyd. And it talks about the new thinker into the moving into the future age, and it's a really fascinating book from the 1800s. Not many people are familiar with it, but it talks about how there's certain figures in history, whether it's a Jesus, a Buddha, or whatever, that created these shifts. And say you had Rome, right, where you had the Roman imperial cult, as I talk about in Cult World Part 10, and you have all these people worshiping Rome and the different deities, which are kings, just average people who are seen as deities, who are seen to have this divine right to rule. And over time, through this imperial cult and all this investment, suddenly there is this guy named Jesus who comes along, or the idea of Jesus, or even just his teachings that come into prevalence. And now people are not following the imperial cult. They're questioning the imperial cult, and they're saying, hey, I owe allegiance to something higher. Now that authority is getting challenged, and Rome is not as strong as it used to be. So Rome, this great empire, rules the world, and this amazing republic, not a kingship, not kings, it's a republic, like we say here in America. And it falls because of various things, including the fact that people are losing faith in it. And as Alexander Tytler, a historian, talks about the cycles of history, faith is what gets us out of bondage. When people start putting their faith and inspiration and courage into resources other than the state authority and the current way things are, and they start creating music and culture and art around it, it starts to evoke feelings, it starts to make people feel immersed in that new reality, it becomes the new reality. The slave who sings on the plantation about their own freedom, they soon have it, because they were, in a way, you could say, manifesting it. It's not a new age way to say, it's just a way of saying they actually inspired themselves to say, we can be free, and this is what it looks like, and this keeps a good mindset on ourselves, so that way when we are free, we will enjoy life. We will get to actually live life. Now, not that they will, and there might be other problems, right? Like, we now have a bigger issue of slavery since the 1800s, and the abolitionists warned us about that, but nonetheless, they were proud to get rid of a very overt practice of slavery. It's a very brutal form of slavery. I mean, think of the witch trials, burning someone just for practicing a certain type of medicine, just for thinking something, off with the head just for saying something different. There were many persecutions by the Catholic Church for people who thought differently, who thought the earth was different, or thought that just Jesus and the models that the church say are the standard religion ways of teaching, that it should be different. Like Pelagianism is one of my favorite views, or just alternative views in the Catholic Church. Not many people heard of it. And basically this guy was like saying, hey, we're not evil by our birth. We're not sinners just because we come into this world. We're programmable. Kind of like what Mark Passio says, what we're talking about is like, people are prone to change, and just because someone's born in this world doesn't make them good or bad. And just having that view and saying like, hey, we need to inspire, educate, and become moral. We have to show by our actions. Just by having that view, the Catholic Church did not like that. And there were all these debates between different theologians saying, well, Pelagianism, this is heresy, and this is heretics, and all this stuff, right? So I think we've moved beyond that, because we've also even moved beyond the language. Look at the way people spoke in the 1800s, or even the 1900s, or the 1700s. And sometimes it's like really eloquent, really nice, but then other times it's like, this is really sophisticated slavery. It's like terminology meant to make you think like, oh, these people know what they're talking about. And it's really fancy, and it's declared on a fancy piece of paper, and they have this magical authority, and they have this outfit in this crown that gives them that authority. And so, we're moving beyond that. We're really moving beyond that. I think people are getting sick of the left and right game. Every college kid I talk to, they're starting to think for themselves as they see the world, get really troublesome, and they feel the effects of scrolling on social media. They feel the effects of not having community, of their infertility declining, of disease happening all around them. It becomes hard to ignore because reality shows it. So it's not just that you have to share a message that is truth related. The world itself shares that message. The world itself is assisting you in your message. And yet you think the world is against you, but that's the man-made world. The natural world is on your side if you have the truth. But then again, the question is, do you have the truth? And can you help an individual find that truth for themselves? Because if that truth is natural, then it's right there in front of them. You don't have to convince them. You don't have to necessarily give them all the information. In fact, psychologically, you can have all the information in the world and it doesn't matter one bit. Gandhi knew this, which is why he moved hearts, not minds, through the use of civil disobedience, of just walking in the streets. He knew that he had to show and do something that would captivate people's emotions, because convincing someone of something is simply not enough, even if you manage to do it. Having that emotional investment is what makes everything, which is why religion is such a powerful tool for religion, for governments, and against governments. Absolutely. Because once you get people's faith and resources through tithing and all this other stuff that the churches promote, you got a charity, and you got to like give your money here and give your money there and make sure you do this. It's for God. That it promotes such a spirit of like, we're going to change things. we're destined to change things, and it must change, right? That's a really powerful spirit. So you need to have that controlled if you're a government system, or you need to at least make sure it's not questioning your authority, if you're a government system. Right. So I hope that answers a lot of this question. And so I do believe there's a lot of hope, actually. And those desires and hungers, they drive us, and they might lead us to destruction, but there's also desires and hungers that lead us to amazing growth. We can be selfish and greedy and doing good for our world. Selfish and greediness, it depends on where you're putting your money and what the money's doing to you mentally, if you're using it as a tool or not. People are always going to have different forms of barter, of trade, and it's their choice of, am I going to share this with others in a way that is voluntary, and in a way that is going to show by example, help them produce for themselves, not make them dependent on me, not make them have an expectation to work always with me. Because there's also a lot of truthers who are like, we got to set up our own towns, and we got to break away from society, and we got to create a commune. And that has a lot of problems of its own. Like what the project I'm creating in my own community on 5 acres, we're not creating a neighborhood, we're creating a community center. Trying to create a product, trying to create a business. And that might sound scary to a lot of truthers. It's like, oh, you want to make money? Money is a root problem. It's like, no, I want to create change. I want to shift minds. And money is part of that process. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big fan of bartering too. I love bartering, actually, to be honest. And thank you for answering that. A great answered that. And I got another one. So this is great. I'm really happy that the chat is enjoying this conversation and got some questions for you. So I'm going to do my best. As I said, guys, I don't have my glasses with me, so I'm going to do my best here. So please be a little patient. But the question for you, Corey, is what are the top 5 dystopian sci-fi movies that most accurately predict and explain what to expect in our accelerated forced transformation from a physical existence to a physical existence and physical body needs will be into the nascent digital AI future world in the span of just 2 or 3 generations?
I'll tell you now, everything is going to be AI soon. There's already more than half the internet is AI or botted. If it's not AI, it's some scripted program thing. But the reality is that most people are already kind of living like robots anyways. And would you rather have a doctor treating you, which hasn't really been working that well, or an AI? And the reality is that people are going to start moving to AI as they realize it works better. And many people are going to prefer it as their governor, as their teacher for a lot of things. And that doesn't mean it's the truth. It doesn't mean that's what you should follow. But that's what people are going to go to. Now, as for movies, I'll be honest with you, I don't watch movies anymore. Now, there's a lot of truth in movies, I will say that. From what I've seen, what I've been exposed to, there's a lot in movies. And I'm sure that some people in the chat, if you guys want to share things with each other, I think it's also a good question for AI. And be like, hey, what current movies out there have these themes and those themes, and then to study them and bring them together. And it would actually make really good documentaries. I feel like somebody can probably make a whole channel dedicated to just decoding messages in movies, or bringing together movies of various sorts to show messages happening in the world. I think there's a lot of potential with content creation there that isn't utilized by content creators. But aside from that, I'm sorry I can't really give a direct answer as to movies, because I just don't watch movies. I'm producing my own content. I'm out in nature if I'm not doing that, or I'm watching Twitch. Twitch is my source of media.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so which is like a gaming platform, but has talk about celebrities. They're the celebrities that stream their life 12 hours a day, to their audiences. And there's a lot of psychological effects and stuff that happen from that. But they notice it too. A lot of their viewership is getting botted. A lot of what is sent to them is AI. There's a lot of really big questions in the air for a lot of these platforms, because they don't know how to handle all the AI content that's occurring, and all the copyright that's going to be violated. And I honestly think it's amazing, because going back to the previous question, AI is going to help shift humanity toward a greater enlightenment than ever before in history. And again, the common perception may be in the truth movement, AI is not good. Money is not good, but these are tools which, again, can be utilized for some of the greatest change in our reality. And I strongly believe that AI is going to help us reach our full potential in the aspect of freedom and medicine and across the board. Because now you can generate any book for free, basically instantly, on any topic. Soon you'll be able to produce videos of anybody on anything. You can compile any amount of work, and I've written all my books myself, and it's becoming worthless soon, because soon you can just start producing it. But that's not a bad thing. Just because my own personal creativity is not being formulated through years of time and hard-staking work, does not mean that it's not meaningful or impactful anymore. We're still going to want to be creative. We're still going to want to build relationships, because that's a human need. And we shouldn't supplant that or replace that with AI and technology. But these tools and creating books save us time, and they may allow us to have stronger relationships and may allow us to have a stronger understanding of our own health. So I talk about that relationship as AI for NI, artificial intelligence for natural intelligence. And yeah, there's been many different like movies, I think, showing that. You know, The Matrix in particular is often referred to in the truth movement. You know, and you see a lot of like weird tubes going into the body and like AI stuff like in the movie, which I think are very interesting. But we have to be the ones to create that culture shift. And now that we have AI at our fingertips, everybody can be a movie producer. Everybody can make a video game. Everybody can write a book. And isn't that amazing? We've never been able to do that in history before. This is the first time in history where everybody has access to information as much as we do, and so much abundance as much as we do. So people are like, oh my gosh, all these companies, they're oppressive and capitalism. It's like, they don't realize like how much amazing potential comes from all this innovation and all this challenge of like, hey, I gotta make a business and I have to be successful and make a product that people like. It's a very creative pursuit, and it's something that teaches you how to work with people, how to organize, how to lead. We should be trying to enter that role, not trying to avoid it. But I think it's hard for people to do it, and that's why they don't want to do it. They're afraid of doing it. I'll be honest with you.
Well, AI is, see this, I got a love-hate with relationship with AI at this point, and I'll tell you why quickly, is that you kind of touched on it. I think that it's a lot to do with the copyright things, and you know, especially with music. I talk a lot about AI and music and how it's, you know, it's stealing to be honest. And there's a lot of these musicians and producers and go down the chain who go at what goes into creating a song or music, and they're not getting compensated for it, and I think they should be. But that's not my kind of my gripe. What I wanted to ask you, Corey, because you're talking about AI and you kind of brought this up, and I only ask, like I said, I speak from experience. I have a few friends that have lost their jobs, just recently to AI. So I want to ask you. I get what you're saying, and I understand that it can be used, but how do you answer people that say, "Listen, I lost my job to AI," because it is taking jobs. So what is your response to that?
So wouldn't you want to do your job not for money, but because you love it and because you care and you want to express your soul and your passion and your art and your creativity, because it feeds you joy and it feeds other people joy? It's not about the identity or the attention or copyright. What is copyright? To protect some words, protect an image, protect a sound. You want to try to capture a sound or an image or some words, I think you're going to be in for a surprise, because reality doesn't do that. Nature, again, you try to put it in a box and people want to, and it's very tempting to, so you can try to have a control on things. But the more you let go of your ego, the more you realize you'll let go into nature. Because anything man-made, whether it's a book or something amazingly artistic, it's just never going to encapsulate the beauty that is nature when you truly let go into that no ego, like I am open, I'm an invitational, like we can all be artists, we can all be creative, we can do it together, and not to sell it, but to actually have some sort of communal spirit where it's benefiting our health and our happiness. Isn't that what life is all about? So I believe that when these jobs disappear, it's not a bad thing necessarily. In fact, a lot of these jobs are 9 to 5 grinding forever, drudgery, that people often equate to a form of slavery, wage slavery. Which I talk about in my slavery book. It's not really a form of slavery per se. It's a controversial form, right? But it's still a form of drudgery, or where you can't do the things that you want to do in your life because you're having to work for the dollar so much in your life. So it's very interesting that this anti-capitalist sentiment that's coming out of people is going to be overcome by capitalism. And it's actually going to work in their favor. Capitalism is actually going to work for anti-capitalism by the use of technology and robots, because it's going to help people not work, which is exactly what the anti-capitalists want. So isn't that interesting? But It's because it has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with knowledge. It took a lot of knowledge to create a computer and what we're talking on right now. Like putting together those parts, arranging it in such a way, such a particular way that everything functions smoothly. If something goes wrong in this computer right now, I can't talk to you. In this microphone, like it's broken, right? But they've designed it so perfectly that it's able to do the function that it can. We as humans, we want to perfect things. We want to do better. We want to achieve our highest potential because that's what fulfills us in our life. So this is very inspiring to see that like we're moving into a world where we're trying to do better. Now, I know there's a lot of hardships involved to get there. Again, look at the past to bring us to where we are now. And we have to be content with where we are now because otherwise we're just going to be like, man, it's not good, it's not good. And we could have said that for thousands of years before us. But look where you are now after thousands of years. I'm pretty darn grateful. So it's like at a certain point you have to sit in gratitude, and that also allows you to move forward on your own to say, hey, I can work with what's here because you can't resist change. Change itself is a natural law, right? I mean, it's basically the idea that, things are going to happen and people are going to create things. And my message is nature is the answer. So I can be sounding like some of the most anti-technology, anti-AI people at times. I call it the second government. I warn people about all the issues all the time, but yet right now I sound super optimistic because I'm entertaining ideas, and I think people should think critically and make up their own mind on this. But just by having this conversation and seeing those different perspectives, we change ourselves and just change the world for the better. And that's what AI is doing constantly. It's challenging us, and us challenging it. I think it's going to create this amazing combination, this amazing amalgamation where people are going to realize the importance of nature and realize the importance of AI. Both of them are not understood. I would argue both of them are often misused by people because of ideologies, belief systems, government, and in the sports and all the things that I talk about in the Cult World documentary. Like, cults again can happen with anything. So whether we're talking about a super like medicinal like mushroom superfood and healing techniques, or we're talking about AI and some robot that you have in your house that does everything for you and you checking your phone all the time, if you grow attached to either one too much and you fall in love with it and you say everybody must do it, and you start using coercion and mind control techniques and telling people like this is what you need to do because this is divine, God says so, or because technology, this is destined for humankind, and nature, this is barbaric and we shouldn't do any of the natural medicine stuff and we shouldn't harmonize in nature. The minute we start secluding some of these solutions, the minute we start saying, oh, AI should be programmed this way where it only shows this particular perspective, then it becomes a problem. And so people are picking up onto that, but that's where the real problem is. It's not just the nature of AI and existence or the nature of anything in existence, right? Like when people say nature is bad, that's one of my biggest things that's like my pet peeves, because nature is just nature and it could be used for all sorts of things, a tree is really healing, and I would say it's a beneficial force, but at the same time, you can use that tree and turn it into something that could hurt someone, and it could fall on your house and kill you or something. That doesn't mean the tree is bad, right? So it's these types of nuances. It's like, well, a tornado is evil, so nature is evil. It's like, well, your perception of nature is how you want to have a relationship with the world around you. And so if you're going to have a relationship with AI where you say it's fearful, I should never engage with it, I don't think you're ever going to use it, and you're going to miss out on the ability to reach information that is much better than what we're sharing right now on this podcast, because it'll be tailored to you, or it'll be specifically like laid out in such a way that is profound. I mean, nowadays you can produce anything in any format, in any way possible.
Yeah, this is the struggle I've had with AI, is exactly kind of what we're touching on. I'm really glad that you really kind of we got into this because I agree with what you're saying about nature, and I have to, and I've had to work on telling myself that AI is a tool, and just like you said, just like a hammer can build something monumental and
Yeah.
great and can help the world, or you can club somebody to death with it. Like, it's a tool and it's how it's
Hmm.
used, and that's a whole different show. But I get what you're saying. I really do. And I think this AI discussion, it's led to some really interesting conversations I've had with people, and some people are for it, some people are scared of it, some
Yeah.
people are really, it's an interesting one, and I can tell you the people that I just spoke of that lost their jobs are not happy with AI right now. But
Yeah.
I also get what you're saying, that we're trying to, like, we got to move past and kind of look at the big picture, and I think that's
Yeah.
really important. But
Like Jim
I'm telling
Gale,
you, Corey, this
like he's living off
exactly, yeah,
grid and he's
yep,
producing all his own food, water, energy. Wouldn't we all want to live like that? And then what's the point of really working in a way if you think like that? It sounds
yep,
utopian, but he's living it and you can go there. And if you can see it and someone's living it, then it's not utopian, is it?
that's right. I say that all the time, Corey. I'm like, could you imagine if you didn't have to get up and you said it perfectly, grind away at a job that most people hate going to?
Hmm.
If you could take all of that energy that you're, for the better part of your life, the best parts of your years, slaving away at these jobs that you don't want to do, if you could not do that and find a way to do what you're truly passionate about, love doing, how powerful that is. And then I think all of this, like, money thing, and that will eventually work itself out, whether it's through bartering or people will want your paintings or your
Yeah.
music. I mean, I see that picture as well.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And again, people are going to produce their own paintings and music and stuff because of the joy and the happiness and the
Yep.
health involved. And that's something that people in the AI world need to understand. Because again, I'm critiquing both worldviews, right? So if you're stuck in the scientific, again, the science cult, the AI cult per se, where you're looking at everything in terms of numbers in statistics or mechanism, and you're not looking at the spiritual, heart-based, emotional intelligence, trauma, nature connection that we should have, and you can look into eco psychology, which is like the importance of humans in their connection to nature. Then you're going to live in a very sterile, technocratic world. But if you live in a world that has a harmony between the AI and NI, then you would see what you have at Jim Gale's, which is 3D printed buildings, solar panels, and all these fancy, complex technological systems that work with nature, and then Airbnbs that people can visit, and then like it's just, it's mind blowing when people go there because they know it's the future, and they know that if they can live that life, they would, because it's free from all those modern day problems that most people face.
Right.
And so why can't we get to that point as humanity if we do our things right? And technology gives us the ability to do that because now we can educate people sooner, using these tools. And it could be tailored to them individually. We don't have to have a standardized curriculum by some teacher or by some system. Now it could be decentralized where people learn through their own AI assistants, right? Again, that doesn't mean now we have to put AI into the brain. That doesn't mean that, it is the only source of wisdom and we shouldn't learn from any spiritual texts. Like, these are the things people are going to jump to because of a cult mentality, but it doesn't need to be that way. It's the same thing they do with, like I'm saying, any other perspective. Every regime in history had good ideas. That's why they gained power. Every single medicine that was created has good intentions. So we're going to prevent this disease, we're going to do this. It doesn't mean it's the right medicine. So every single thing is going to challenge each other for the greater innovation of our society. And some people call it accelerationism, and again, it's really just capitalism, which is what makes it controversial, but by its nature, because you have competition and products that are probably not going to be as good as they will be in the future, or they were in the past, and products that are going to compete with each other in the present. So of course there's going to be controversy.
That's a great point, Corey, and I can't believe we're at the end almost. We got about a minute and a half till the end of the show. I want to thank you, Corey, so much for taking the time. I know you're
Yeah.
busy, and to come and talk to us on the show. And I enjoyed this conversation. I was looking forward to it. I want to give you the last minute and a half to let people know where they can find any of your work. Anything you want people to know, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think it's good that you mentioned AI because it's something that is not talked about in my documentary a whole lot. It's in the consumerism part of the documentary, but there's still parts to be produced for the documentary, by the way. So you'll see some parts about it as moving forward. But again, the cult mentality can happen with anything, and I think that's the key point here. And when I'm talking about government, a government could take form off of anything. But the underlying belief system of statism is what makes a government, right? So you can believe a robot has the right to rule, and therefore that morality has exceptions because of that. And so whether you put the clothes of the king on a robot or a human being doesn't make a difference because the same actions are being committed. And so whether it's an AI doing it or whether it's a human doing it or whether it's
Right.
AI directing it or a human directing it, we have to look at what we're manifesting in the world actively. And if we're manifesting a world of disease, of hunger, of scarcity, of all of the problems that we see, then we know we're not doing things right. And people see that we're not doing things right now. And they're looking up to AI as their savior. And it doesn't mean it's going to be their savior. And why is that? Because they're centralizing the AI and they're giving it to governments and they're not using it as a decentralized tool, just like anything else. If they,
I'm so sorry.
yeah,
I'm so sorry.
if they,
We rolled it right to the end, my friend.
all
I got the
good.
bumper music playing. I want to thank you so much, everyone. Please go to Corey's YouTube channel, check out his work. I provided links in the chat room. Take care, guys. Thank you so much, Corey.
Thank you.
You guys are the greatest.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess I'll leave that. All right. Well, that was that. Basically, the point I was getting at the end was I hope you guys understand some of the premises that I was presenting there. I'm very skeptical of AI, of course, but seeing the role it has is immense for freedom. It really is. And for freeing minds as a whole, getting people out of cults as a whole. It has potential to do that. Everything has potential. And it depends on how you use it. Tai Chi, it may be a gentle exercise, but there are people who get injured doing Tai Chi. Natural law. It might sound like a great philosophy, but there's problems, like I said, where people are going to say, oh, I was committing self-defense. And that justifies me doing this action to you. Or, oh, this person lied, so I must do this in response to retaliate. People are going to make all sorts of weird justifications for different things. And so, at the end of the day, I'm challenging you to always question what you think and what you believe. So, thank you to Crypt Rick for inviting me on. And thank you for everybody in the chat who's been staying tuned. I was thinking of maybe going live on college campuses. So when that happens, there was a last week of school very, very lately at one of the colleges I went to. So probably mid-January, I'll start going live on college campuses. But I'm actually might go live tomorrow. And the reason why is because of Scientology. I live in Florida near the headquarters of Scientology. And there are some leading researchers, content creators who have gotten into a bit of trouble, but also that do protests every single week near the headquarters. Now, I'm not a fan of protests, but I am a fan of networking and connections and making a change. And so I'm very peaceful and respectful, of course. I think I might live stream making some connections in Clearwater, Florida, with some folks near Scientology, since they usually do their live streams and protests every Friday. So that'll be cool. And they're also they do it really well. They have like signs where it's like, honk if you think Scientology is a cult. And I don't know if you guys ever seen that, but in case you haven't seen it, stay tuned for tomorrow. It would be quite exciting. I'll be meeting a whole bunch of new people, doing some networking with the anti-Scientology crowd and seeing what we can do. And really, I don't know a whole lot about Scientology. Of course, I know people who have escaped it and all that, and I have a part about it in my documentary. But the very simple premises that people don't have transparency in Scientology, like you can't just go to Clearwater and like have a conversation about Scientology if you have a camera, if you're an influencer, if you're just curious, like, is it a cult, and they won't talk to you about these questions. They don't do media appearances. It just creates a environment where there's not much transparency. Like, what do you expect is going to happen? People are going to accuse you of being a cult more because of it. So I'm going to go there myself and make some connections. And interestingly enough, every single table I do at different markets, Scientology is there too, selling their books. So they get a lot of new recruits, and they use their Dianetics and psychological approaches on a lot of people. But the organization itself is not very transparent, and that's an issue, right? So you might have a lot of people on the ground who are good people, who are trying to be transparent, but the system itself, and when you try to negotiate and ask the challenging questions, they don't want to talk about it, or they get defensive. I'll ask questions like, why is the father, why is the daughter speaking up against Scientology, right? It's like, oh, well, don't you have problems with your own family? It's like, that's not the answer to the question, is it? Like, what's going on here? At least speak up about it, talk about it, create a dialogue if you don't want there to be controversy. I mean, you have people protesting outside your building, talk with them, you know? Dana White outside the UFC would literally walk up to his own protesters and say, what's going on here? Why can't Scientology do the same? Where they feel like someone's going to hurt them? I mean, come on. You know? You have the courage to speak with the people who disagree with you. And of course, as long as they're respectful. And if they're not respectful, they'll expose themselves. At least you did the greater action. So it's my call to Scientology there. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you, Crypt Rick. Everybody, check out Crypt Rick. He's in the chat right now on YouTube. Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking. That's where you can find out his content. Make sure to subscribe. Stay tuned. He interviews people all the time. And adios. I'm going to be working on more stuff. Fun fact, I'm going to be publishing like 5, upwards of 10 new books very soon. And why is that? Because Mike Adams released some new AI tools and gave me access to them. I no longer have to work hours and hours into the night, even though I still do, for books that take me, you know, a month or several months to produce. Using AI, that process is much faster because I have lists and lists of ideas, and frankly, I wouldn't be able to do them my entire life if I had to do them all by hand myself. So although my old books are non-AI produced, I am going to use AI assistance for my upcoming books, and I hope that doesn't offend anybody, especially after this conversation I had with Cryptrick, because it's going to allow me to reach much greater audiences, and I'm still in control of the knowledge. I'm still in control of the information, and I'm still the one feeding it what to say, and that's the key. And I'm processing it through a decentralized AI. So I'm not supporting anybody that, you know, or any organizations that are going to use it for nefarious purposes or throw in their own agendas. So I hope you appreciate that. And I think it'll be very helpful for this Christmas season because you have to give gifts to your loved ones. And I wrote some really interesting books that might be good for your loved ones to open their mind and see more in the world. Thank you everybody for watching. Take care.